Hello again. I decided to kill two birds with one stone and I'm posting again because I have yet another passage to read out. And this one I labeled Slight Chaos of the Mind and Overanalyzing because that's what it seemed like at the time. But looking back on all of this, I should probably change the title. Anyway, I'm haunted by the ghostly image and the absence of her, of what I long to connect to recapture and embrace the essence of what I yearn to be, but am, yet seemingly have forgotten how to be. To reinvoke and rekindle, and even ignite that spark with my inner child, my nearest and dearest innermost self, me. Sometimes I try to find her in a forest amongst the fae, the lush greenery, and the stoic trees that ground me to our mother Gaia. At the cliffside of a beach, when it's far too early for anyone to be outside other than fishermen, or perhaps the occasional beach enthusiast. Or simply just in time to watch the sunrise, peeking through the heavy clouds in the morning fog. Or at times in a really good book, if you catch my drift. So good I get lost in it and forget any figment of the real world and just allow myself to slip into fantasy. But I can't hide forever. And I certainly can't hide the real me. She's there waiting to be unleashed to the world. A ferocious, beautiful and powerful, yet gentle, warm and kind-hearted soul. A gentle beast. Now that's me. But the issue of contention arises when it starts to become conflicting. Where has she gone? How can I get her back? How can I take off the facade to unmask and unveil her true inner beauty? It seems like a relatively simple task, and yet the solution evades me. Let me just stop right there for a second. Again, I think I keep reiterating this, but this is how I've been feeling for so many years. Like, a lot of the times growing up, I felt like I was very disconnected and detached from my external environment and even my body. In most cases, and again, a lot of the times, I found myself kind of in the ether or in my mind, but I was never fully really here and present. I was never grounded. I never had a solid ego, a sense of self even, or an identity to speak of. I just always felt like an outsider looking in, living my life in an like from the third perspective, basically. Or like, how they talk about breaking the fourth wall, and the characters in certain TV shows or maybe movies will stare directly into the camera. It's kind of like that. Like I became the observer of my own mind and body sometimes. But sometimes I would come down like, here, and it was more so mental energy. At first it was like it was more so up here, and then it somehow condensed and it was more so in here. And yeah, I was completely disassociated. Like a solid 90% of the time, I did not want to be here because this never felt like home. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. I hope you didn't hear that. I need to charge my laptop. It was a bizarre experience. It was strange growing up to feel like I'm an alien that just accidentally stumbled onto this plane of existence. and desperately trying to navigate my way through this dimension and on planet Earth. I never understood it. And I hope you can understand when I say this. I don't know, because it might sound strange, because that's how I felt. It was really strange. I couldn't myself at times quite put my finger on it, on what it was exactly. I just knew this wasn't home. And I'll tell you what actually fueled this. Not too long ago. Well, it was long ago. It was in childhood, very early childhood. One of my first vivid memories. I'm standing in the living room and I'm staring out the window. And I remember, well, I couldn't exactly form a cohesive sentence to describe what I was feeling, but, knowing what I know now and being able to accurately describe it now, the best way I could put it was this feeling manifested in the form of a yearning, an intense longing, a need to go home, because somehow, some way, intuitively, at the core of my being, I knew this wasn't home. I just knew. But at the same time, I also knew that I came here for a reason. I have some kind of purpose to fulfill. And I never quite, it was something that I felt like for a very long time, I wouldn't ever be able to find. And it would make me almost turn into this really, I don't know, it would make me very despondent and just indifferent and deeply sad, because I just so desperately wanted to go home, but I knew I couldn't, because there was something. I came here for a reason. There was something that I needed to do. There was something I needed to fulfill before I could go home. And now, again, knowing what I know now, I can now identify that yearning as wanting to reestablish that connection and that intimate, divine, almost communionship with God. God is at the center of everything. God is the focal point of all that we do and in everything that we do. God is in every word, every action, everything. And it was a journey. I keep saying that again, but it was a journey. It was a journey getting to this point and finally coming to realize what it was that I've been searching for all this time, only to recognize it within me and to realize that it was never going to come from an external source. All this time, just desperately longing to feel a sense of belonging was something that I could only ever find within me and with God. And that in itself, it's so almost mystifying, God is so elusive and unfathomable and indescribable and vast, incomprehensible. And yet it is me, it is you, and it is all of us. But again, let me not carry on on another tangent, but it really is the epicenter of all that we do. I remember how I recall this woman hearing. I recall myself hearing this woman say that you need to put intention into everything that you do and behind everything that you do. And I couldn't help but think that, it's like kind of turning your life into like a moving prayer, an art form. Like this, like an idiosyncratic symphony, a beautiful interplay of everything, just all harmoniously flowing and merging with one another and in itself. It's like this undulating being that morphs and like wraps itself around itself. Sounds kind of like I'm describing the fourth dimension here. Yeah, it's so jarring, and yet it's so poetic. Really. Anyway, let me continue. I'm not through. I slowly felt as though this was starting to devolve into pure chaos and the mad ramblings of a lonesome soul. I get why the unknown is terrifying. Taking massive risks feels like you're playing a wild game. It's you against the odds of it working or not working in your favor. Like the waves at sea when the tide is high and the current is even stronger and more pervasive and violent than the tidal waves itself. They crash, slam, and move so inconsistently, wildly even, and so much so that you can't help but be enthralled by its rage and loathing. So into the depths of despair is where you plunge, into its dark, murky pit, swallowing you whole, engulfing you, consuming you. It's quite terrifying as you gasp your last breath and let it take you, sinking in. And you do so anyway. You willingly submit and fall right along into it. It's dangerous, and yet it's so mysterious and alluring. A trick, a gimmick of the mind, so to speak. A game of cat and mouse. Where will you end up? How will it go? Who knows? You can never, ever tell for sure. And if there's one thing that's guaranteed in this life, I think I've mentioned this before, is that nothing is guaranteed. And there are so many people that I know of in my life that refuse to accept that as fact. But I get it. It's not easy. And I mean, again, if you're not at that, that level or that caliber of consciousness, not to say that anyone is above the other or beneath the other. We're just all at varying degrees and different levels. We've all got different karma. But, if you're at a more, like at a lower, I guess you could say, level of consciousness, I think you just run away from the concept altogether, or you deny it into the ground, because it's scary. Nature is scary. Nature is chaotic. It's convoluted, but somehow, some way, there is a divine order to it. It is divinely orchestrated. And it just is. It just is. Yeah. It's been one hell of a journey. Sorry, I just realized that, I don't know if I'm allowed to. Whatever, it's not a bad word. It's been a remarkable journey, and it still is. And yeah, whoever you are, again, I keep saying this, you're not alone. You're never alone. There's always going to be something pushing you, creating some kind of momentum, because change is inevitable and stagnancy is only temporary. So let it take you. Let it carry you to where you need to be. And in my case, I guess, it'll carry me and it'll take me to my North Star, my guiding light. And I hope that it does the same for you. Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say. And I'll leave you at that. Goodbye for now.